live in an area where it would make sense to actually have an in-ground pool and you're wondering if it makes sense to either install one in a house that doesn't have a pool already or to buy one that has a pool, let's talk about the pros and cons. So, on average, an in-ground pool can increase the property value anywhere from about 5 to 8%. And that's going to depend on the area that you live in. If you're in more of an area that's prone to it just being very hot outside, think like Florida, where I am, of course, having some type of pool on the outside is going to be a perk for many, many purchasers. But if you live somewhere where it tends to be cooler and people don't get to use the pool year round, perhaps it might not increase the value of that home very much. So that's something to think about, just the climate of the area that you live in, whether or not the community where the home is located already has some type of community pool, or if people in that community tend to desire a pool at all. All of those things are going to come into play when you think about what percentage from that 5 to 8% will even actually be an increase in the value of your home. You might say to yourself, does that even make sense? Maybe I should just buy a home that already has a pool. And that is something to consider as well. On average, a home, comparable homes, so you're looking at homes that are very similar, right? That one that has a pool and one that does not have a pool, on average, the one with the pool tends to sell for about 5 to 15% higher. So if you want to go ahead and purchase a home that already has a pool, that can make sense because then, yeah, you're going to pay a bit more, but you're not going to have to deal with installation of the full pool, finding a pool company, getting it installed, and being a part of that process that could or could not be a little bit stressful, just depending on the person and depending on the company that you go with. So that's something to think about. And you might be saying 5 to 8% is what an in-ground pool could increase the value of a property. So then how is it they sell for 5 to 15% more? So some of that could be attributable to just other things like within the home, perhaps some perks, or just the fact that the pool is already there. So don't think about that as a negative though, because 8% of a $500,000 house is still 40,000. So it's not chump change. So then you might say, if I'm going to spend quite a bit of money, and does it really make sense if let's say if I had that $500,000 house and it increases the value of the house 40,000, does that even make sense? How much does an in-ground pool cost? On average, times have changed. It used to be a lot lower, but on average, an in-ground pool, what I've been seeing out there and hearing from people is that it's about 95, 100, or even much higher, just depending on what type of pool that you want. If you really want some high-end features, that's really going to impact the cost of the pool. But if you skip out on the features, then you might not actually get much value add to your property. People would just may not see it as a value add. And so you have to think at that level of cost. If you're going to spend $95,000 or $100,000, you don't really want to skimp out on the landscaping and the pool design and think on decking, the patio, all of those types of things will come. So you're not going to want to skimp out on the details and all of the perks. You want to do it within budget, of course, but you also want to think about like, is this something that you're going to enjoy later or wish that you had put in a little bit more money and got what you really wanted out of it? And then all of those types of things can even factor into the maintenance of the pool. So think like salt water versus chlorine. What I've heard is that the saltwater pools are going to be a lot more expensive up front, but have less ongoing maintenance costs than your traditional chlorine pool. So it might be cheaper to get in, but might require more maintenance. And then all of that depends on whether or not you're going to do a lot of the maintenance on your own or whether you're going to hire out. So all of that will have to be factored into your budget as well. Of course, you'll want to be prepared for any potential increase in expenses, like depending on what type of pool that you get, you might have to have a higher electric bill. Maybe you're trying to heat that jacuzzi, and depending on how often you might want to get in the jacuzzi, or if you're trying to have a heated pool option, those are some things to consider. You might also have a higher water bill, right? You're going to have a higher water bill and potentially higher repair costs. If there anything that goes wrong with that pool, you are just going to have to either say you put money aside and be prepared for those things so that you won't be blindsided, but know that you do need to put some money aside for any potential repair. So those are things not to be deterred away from the in-ground pool, but more so to be prepared for. And there are also potential costs that people might not necessarily think about. With that pool, you put the pool in and the value of your home went up. Perhaps you might see an increase in your property taxes. You might also see an increase in your insurance costs to insure that home. So think for safety and liability reasons. So the answer to the question really, like, does it make sense to get an in-ground pool installed? It might. Is it going to cost you? It surely will. Are you going to recoup the entire cost of the installation and maintenance and all of that? Likely not, but you will get something back. And remember, this decision, if you're thinking about a pool, it's likely not just all in the numbers. You're thinking about it because you enjoy it. And can you really put a price tag on that? Maybe, depends on the family, right? And your dynamics of your family, what you want. Is the added increase going to be something that's going to make it difficult for you to be able to take vacations or do some of the things that you love? Or is it really not going to break the bank and you're going to be perfectly fine? Then really, is it even a question because you're going to enjoy it? But all in all, you might not get the exact return on your investment, but that's just relatively speaking, it's not always about the money. So there are the other aspects of it as well. So, even though there are those things as well, if you think about it, you could also go and just pay more for a pool, but obviously you didn't get to help in the design of that particular pool because it was already installed. So that's something to think about. And you might even say, I'm not even sure that we are going to live in this house forever. Again, I think that does go back to your budget. If it makes sense for you in the time and you're going to enjoy it, then perhaps it's okay to just move forward with that. Understand when it goes time to rent it, it's just like anything else. Is it in a neighborhood where people and the likely renter is going to desire having a pool? Is it a certain age group or demographic that it doesn't really matter? Is it a young family that will be a very huge thing? Is there already a community pool? Are people willing to spend more for the rent that you might charge for that reason? And obviously liability will come into place. So you want to make sure you have the right insurance measures in place. And then you are likely going to be responsible for taking care of that pool. And obviously, when someone else is renting it out, wonderful renters who will take great care of your things. And then there might be some who might neglect it a bit. So you just have to plan all around that and make sure that you didn't make such a huge investment and someone else is going to come in and have care about it. So you definitely want to plan about how you're going to make sure that you maintain the investment just like you would for the house, even if it didn't have a pool.